Go for it. Okay, we'll call this meeting to order. Ashley, would you call the roll, please?
Yes. Mike Davidson,
Here.
Tom Dewitt,
Here.
Preston Elkins,
Here.
Steve Davis.
Here.
Have a quorum.
Okay, you have a quorum. Thank you, everybody, for coming today. Chris, do we have anybody on Zoom today? I'm sorry, Danielle. Okay. Okay, the minutes of October 1st have been published and distributed, so we don't need to read them if there's no corrections. Do we have a motion to approve these minutes?
So moved.
Okay, do we have okay? Minutes of October 1st have been approved with no objection. The agenda is published in advance. I notice a difference in this agenda than what was put out. Did we cancel something on the agenda regarding?
This was the only agenda.
Okay,
The other one was just a brief description of what we were looking to do, to talk about, but after speaking with, Chris, he decided to take the other item off.
gotcha. Okay. So no objections, will approve this agenda. Okay, first up is the water and wastewater solid waste rate study. Chris Moyer.
So I'm not sure how you wanted to, what do you want to talk about? Right now, we are out for 3 quotes. Well, we're waiting on to get back quotes for cost rate analysis for our rate study. But I'm not sure what else you wanted to talk about with that. I know there's a lot to be said about what Waterworth proposed, but as I talked about last week, those numbers were just kind of numbers that they had, so I'm not sure where you want to go.
Okay. Maybe I misunderstood something. So I thought, is this in response to something I put on the agenda? Or
It was,
That's what the email you said you wanted to talk about.
it was
Yes.
also discussed at the end of the meeting to go over that for
Yeah.
this
Okay,
meeting.
okay. Well, in that regard, that's one thing that I did want to discuss. We've, when we started with Sarah, first off, we had a drought contingency plan project. And the first thing we started talking about was raising the rates, which wasn't why we were formed. So essentially all of us wound up quitting because we did not sign on for that. Then we converted, talked to her again about water advisory group. We came on board. So for a long time, the city has been talking about raising the rates. In the last discussion, it was stated that something about a rate increase that was proposed but did not get voted in, which is something that I didn't know. But in the constant, we've talked about this Waterworth quite a few times. So I would like to get to the core of what are we doing on this? Why are we talking about Waterworth all the time? Let people know. Any input?
I'll start real quick. Obviously it started before I came on board.
Yes.
So what I have gathered is that it is a general rate study based on infrastructure improvements. And improving our cash flow, but also being able to afford the improvements over the next 5 years. I'm not positive that I'm correct on that, but I am correct. Okay. So that's my general understanding of Waterworth. But since that was previous to me, I don't know why that was started. Or anything that I would have to.
I'll help with that, Chris. I might have put the ball in motion on it. At my first meeting, it had to have been back in January, February of 24 or 23. I don't know how long I've been on this now. It just rolls together. Okay. Sarah had kind of just proposed some rates, and so my response was, well, how do we come up with those numbers? And the response was, well, I looked at various other communities. I looked at Lovington and Rio Rancho, and we just kind of combined them and fell somewhere in the middle. And my thoughts were, well, we have completely different systems than them. We can't compare them because it's not apples to apples. We're looking at apples to oranges. We probably need to look at some type of rate study to actually see what our rates should be. I think that's where the Waterworks came in, because I think Rio Rancho uses it as a budgeting tool, not as the rate study. I think that's right. Yes, ma'am.
So I actually called Rio Rancho and I talked to them about Waterworks
Mhm.
and how they liked it and what they used it for. They use it for their rates. They use it for whether they need to raise them, whether they don't need to. They also use it for their cost analysis, which is part of the package that we purchased. We purchased a package of cost analysis and rates. So it is a 2-in-1 company.
Okay. I thought the guy at his presentation told us we didn't choose the cost
We
analysis.
did, and I emailed and I made sure, and
Okay.
it is part of our contract with them.
Okay. Well, then we may just look into seeing.
We have a meeting with them tomorrow to go over. kind of
Okay.
the Scope of work, but we also went out for other things, just in case
Okay.
that wasn't.
Okay.
what it was.
Well, I think that's the backstory of why it happened. And so I think that was the gist of it, but we just kind of, you inherited it. So,
Right, and I think it's from what I've looked at with it, it's a general. This is what your infrastructure kind of need, or this is what we project your infrastructure needs money wise over time, over the next 5 years. And this is your general. If you increase your rates like this, you will be able to cover those expenses and have a little cash flow on top of that. So that's what I get out of their presentation. I know a lot was to be said about the wastewater treatment plan, $40 million that they proposed, which is not a real number because we don't have a number for that. But I think that's just a general thing for them to put in. And it was based off of, it also was based off a little bit of the approved price increases that were approved by city council in 2022 and then implemented in 23, but not in 24.
Yeah. So why were they not implemented in 24?
You would have to ask.
Okay.
So there was
30%?
a rate. I don't even know if it was 30%. There was a rate
Yeah.
plan that was tiered. Yeah, that you can see on the website. That shows, hey, and is it starting in 22? And then you had like a 5-year plan or something like
That
that?
started in 23. So it was approved in 22, it was started in 23, then went all the way to 27. So it was an 8% for residential, it was an 8% rate hike every year. And then obviously the more you used, the more your rate hike was to discourage a lot of water use. And then it was the same, it just depends on where you're at, public education, we're at 35%. Industrial and co-op went up 75% back then, and then down to 25% next year. So
Went up 75%? Is that what you just said?
Yeah.
their original rate increase was a 75% rate increase, which is where they're at right now.
Oh, it was 30.
There was a deal that came up in 23 about 30%, because there was a bunch of us. that
I remember
Really
it was
upset about it and it put some brakes on it. Because it was gonna do like 30% across the board for the next 5 years, 30%.
right.
It'd be over close to $300 before I can turn the water
Hmm.
on at the house.
Hmm.
And these may be two different issues though. It appears, I mean, based on what he just showed. You wanna?
Yes, sir.
No, that way.
I've seen them.
Oh,
Yeah, I've seen them.
Okay.
I just wanted some clarity on, I can't remember who mentioned that it had been approved, but it didn't take place. I wondered why it didn't take place. Maybe there was a good reason. My problem with the presentation last time, and I understand that we were just pulling numbers out, but I question pulling numbers out on something so important. We proposed 40 million for that wastewater treatment plant. I realized that that was just a number, but it definitely led to incorrect results. By putting out $40 million, the cash trend line just plummeted and made it look like, it looked like a disaster.
So if you look at what they had proposed, it was based off of, if you go with the sewer rates off of the old, I think it was a 12% increase every year.
Mhm.
So if you would have done that 12% increase every year, it's about $40 million is where they were at. And I think that's kind of how they came to their numbers, based off of the rate increases that were proposed
Okay.
previous.
My concern was we were not using realistic scenarios. Between the 40 million, it made the cash trend plummet. The 280 million, it made the cash trend line plummet, making the situation look far worse than reality. And I also wonder if we're kind of not putting the cart before the horse. I mean, we are on restrictions, water restrictions, but we want to raise people's water rates. We have an effluent plant that does not function properly, but we want to raise sewer rates. We have customers calling in because they didn't get their trash picked up, but we want to raise trash rates. I'm seeing what could possibly be a lot of public pushback on this.
So if I may, 2016 was a rate increase, and then there was no rate increase again until 2023.
That was terrible.
If you look at what happened over those years, the cost of labor increased, the cost of goods increased, the shortages and everything like that. So what we have not, in my opinion, what we have not done as a city is put ourselves in the right position to move forward and to upgrade and maintain the infrastructure that we have, since it is old. And while we may be putting the cart before the horse, and we are going out for rate analysis before anything moves forward with any of that, we are behind the power curve, I think, in my opinion.
On the tax curve, let's just say it, we're behind the tax curve. We've got in. I mean, modestly, but not saying 30%, but. The business can't function like this. We're putting out a heck of a lot more than we're bringing in.
Well, you're talking about a rate study and a comparative rate study. But when we compare ourselves to communities that are near us, for example, Clovis has no water restrictions. Their effluent plant is fully operational, and yet their utility bills are basically identical to ours. So
No.
what are we comparing it to? What makes Portales unique?
I'm not sure.
What is so different about Portales?
I'm not sure how many connections EPCOR has, but I know that they have
16,000.
Okay, so they have 16,000 compared to our
6,000.
6,000. So obviously their rates can be more competitive because they have more people to do.
Which also equates to more expenses. They're triple the revenue possibility, but also triple the expense.
They are a large for-profit company, and we are a city. So
Well, but they're still governed by the
they're governed
PRC.
by the PRC.
We don't have that. As a municipality, we get to make up whatever rates we want.
That is correct.
And so that's a little bit different. And it's again, apples to oranges.
Mhm.
They may have a much larger system so they can bring in more revenue, but like Mike said, they're still gonna have a larger expense.
Right.
Um, and I'm Chris, we visited Thursday or Friday. And I think we're somewhat on the same page of, hey, we know there's got to be infrastructure upgrades. There's no question. Our pipes are falling down, our roads are falling down, sewer, trash. If you want your trash picked up, you got to have functioning trucks. So I understand the rates. I think my issue is the 40 million, which we have all said is false,
That can
and-
be changed.
and also the 400 million, I think was the total for the well field improvements.
No, it's
280.
280.
$200.
But even then, that's not theoretical because we're gonna
It's
read
more than that,
PER.
because the total was almost 400 million.
No,
Ashley, we had the report. I promise it is. When you add them all together, it was almost $400 million. And so we did have an engineering study. I think that's where the numbers also came from, was the engineering study. And it was either done by Wilson and Company or somebody that gave us those numbers. Are we going to do all those upgrades? And we'd had this discussion in the past. Well, we're not. I think that study included like 87 new wells being drilled in the next 10 years. We're not going to drill 87 new wells. We're going to drill maybe 5 wells because I think Chris had said, and since he's been here, we've drilled 1 well. So the 87's out of the question. So we shouldn't build our rates on that, even if that is what our study says we need. It's not feasible. There's no way that we have the manpower to get that done. And so I think that's where Mike is coming from of let's build our rates on what we are actually going to do. And I agree with you. We got to have those rate increases to afford them because those are what 80-20 grants, 75-25 grants, something like that. We still have to have cash to pay for it. So the rate increase is a necessity. The property tax increases, those are all necessities that we have to do to be able to function, but we have to make sure that we're doing our due diligence and spending what we actually want.
Which is why we're doing the rate study.
Yeah.
We're not gonna go out and just, just blindly raise rates. It's not gonna happen. There will be data behind it. So I mean.
I think it just
as
threw
a city,
everybody
that's
for
the
us.
best we can do right now.
I think it just flipped everybody out, these astronomical numbers. I mean,
I understand.
and not knowing where they came from, until we talked more and figured out where it was coming. I'm just saying, from what the common people are seeing out there, you tell them $40 million to repair a $25 million facility.
27 million.
Excuse me, I keep doing that, don't I? A $27 million facility. It's hard for people to get their head wrapped around the cost increases. Yes.
If it's okay, the only thing that I want to add to that is what the cost rate analysis would really give you the solid numbers to help you with. Is that they go in and they find out what does it cost to run all of this? What does it cost to purchase a vehicle, a garbage truck? What does it cost to actually to fix the things that are not up to code? What does it cost for all of this? That is what the cost rate analysis will do. That will give you your solid numbers that you're looking for.
Right.
And then you match it up to your rate. And then you go, okay, this makes more sense. And then you have more solid numbers. And so
Totally
it's not
agree.
giving you a 5-year span of, you can have a rate increase of 12% across the board for 5 years, and then we won't see you again. It's going to give you what you need for what you have coming. Exactly.
Let me follow up on something. And Mr. Moyer is not the only one that has inherited a problem or two. As well, everybody in this room essentially have inherited a problem. I know Chris, I know Eric have, Ashley, with this water system. So this isn't a judgment on these people or an expectation, but could we agree to public interpretation of even 27 million which we probably have actually put in $30 million on an affluent water that everybody is paying for that does not function correctly. When Clovis built one for 16 million that does function correctly. They're using it for their parks, their schools, all of their public properties, okay? And we're talking about, and I realize it's just a number thrown out, but if we're talking about putting any more money into this $30 million plant, I see tremendous pushback coming the city's way because that plant has already been paid for. And it is questionably, it was too much paid too much for it. So
On that, I got a question. When we keep saying that the plant's not working correctly, are we talking about the plant? Or are we talking about the distribution, getting that water from the plant to the city?
I should clarify my statement. It obviously is functioning properly, or we would be having a giant mess. I'm
Yes.
talking about the affluent
Okay.
water part of it. We were promised to have affluent water, which would increase our conservation and give us green spaces. And that was what was told to the residents, and that's what passed, and that has never happened.
I just want to make sure that people that are listening to this
Yes.
know that our plant is functioning properly.
And now, through nobody's fault in this room, now we're discussing having to put more money
Yes.
into that plant to make it function. So
You're correct.
I just want that is going to take a big sell.
Well, I would say, I'd be lying if I said we didn't need to put more money into that,
Yes.
because we do, because the infrastructure to use that plant the way it needs to be used, to be operating at its full capacity is not there.
Yes.
So I can't say that we don't need to put more money into it, because I would be lying to you.
Yeah. Okay. That's my concern. It's we got to do something, or we're going to have a $30 million boat anchor out there. It's in regards to affluent water.
And people need to understand that if it's brand new today and it's servicing this town for a year, in a year, we're going to have to put more money into it. It's a perpetual cycle. I mean, it's being used, so maintenance has to be done. Motors have to be replaced, equipment has to be replaced. Just like their car, alternator and tires, in a year, things have to be replaced. You have to keep putting more money into it, but we need to get on a system where, like the city manager was saying, that we're not in a 2016 deal and then jump to 2023 and try to make up the difference of inflation. We got to do something annual.
And we're working on it. And when we have it, it'll have data behind it.
Anything else on this topic? Thomas?
Good.
Okay, that's the only item on the agenda today. Did we have any comments? Go ahead.
If the committee did not know, Oscar Robinson submitted his resignation effective immediately. The mayor knows, and will be
From council?
from the Public Works Committee,
Okay.
from this committee.
Oh, okay.
Whoa.
No,
Oh.
sorry, I meant for this committee.
Well, then we need to add something to the action item then. I guess that can fall under other business. Because we'll have to make a new chair.
Does that have to be published?
No,
I don't know if it does or not. Come on, man, you gotta know all these things.
That's a good one for me.
I don't believe it does, because I don't believe it.
The
Yes.
We,
mayor has to appoint somebody else, but I
He-
don't know, you got it
to the committee, he has
To
to
the
appoint
committee.
somebody?
correct.
Because I know when I first got on, like my first meeting, we voted Oscar in
Yeah,
as the chair. And so maybe we can wait until to vote in somebody new once he replaces him. I
Correct.
assume it's gonna have to be a council member. That's my assumption. So
I have no idea.
I don't know that answer.
I'm hoping y'all would know. We don't. We can wait till next meeting then if We need, don't you?
I think action item has to be published because there could be somebody that wants to show up to protest that action item
Okay.
or have input on it. So.
Okay.
All right, any other comments? Okay. Preston, you have any up here?
Yeah, sorry. I was trying to find, and I finally found it. The numbers that I had stated earlier that we said were wrong. It was $280 million for well field improvements and $62 million for well storage. Plus the 40 million gets you to the 400 million, just so that we are aware that it was about 400 million. But that was my only comment.
Thomas? Okay, I'm good as well. So do we have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Okay, so we're adjourned. Thank you all.